In this project we're going to create a tilt shift effect in post-production. Normally this effect is created in camera using specialized tilt shift lenses, which are very popular with architectural photographers. And what these lenses do is they shift the plane of focus. They can also be used to create special effects, as the one we see here in this Manhattan scene. Okay, I'll just hold down the Alt or Option key and click on the visibility icon of the background layer so we can see how this image was captured with full depth of field extending all of the way back, right back there, all the way to Times Square in the distance there. And what we're doing is we're dropping this focus, so we've just got a very narrow band of focus left in the subject. Again, if I hold down the Alt or Option key and click on that visibility icon, it'll switch the other layers back on. What this effect creates is a look of a miniaturized Toy Town effect, and this is a very popular effect at the moment. This is actually a quick effect to create in Photoshop Elements, and it's a far cheaper effect than actually going out and buying a tilt shift lens, which are incredibly expensive. Okay, I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and select the tilt shift layer here, and then we're going to drag both of these layers to the mini trash can in the layers panel so we can start the project anew. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the background layer. Now we can drag it to the new layer icon down here at the base of the layers panel, or we can use the keyboard shortcut. For a Macintosh that's Command J, for a PC that's Control J, and that will duplicate the layer. And I can simply double click on the layer name in order to rename this layer, like so, and then just click to one side to enter that name. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to drop the focus using the Gaussian blur filter. So we're going to come up to the filter menu, scroll down to blur, and then come across to Gaussian blur. Now you might need to play around with different radiuses in order to create how much depth of field that you want to drop from this image. I actually quite like a high amount, perhaps 20 pixels or more on this 12 megapixel image, and so we're going to apply this amount of radius here, perhaps just a little bit less, and I'll select OK now. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to recover a small area of focus within the image. So we're going to come down to the base of the layers panel and click on this Add Layer Mask icon here. And at the moment this Add Layer Mask icon has created an empty layer mask that we can now fill. Okay, we're going to fill this with a gradient. So we're going to come over to the Tools panel here and click on the Gradient tool. You can press G on the keyboard to fast track that process. We're now going to come up to the Options bar and we're going to select the third gradient in, which is the black-white gradient. And normally we're often working with linear or radial gradients, but in this instance we're going to select this fourth icon along here in the options, which is the reflected gradient option. Now check your mode is normal, your opacity is 100%, and make sure you don't have a reverse option selected. Okay, now we're going to choose the area where we want to be the sharpest, and I'm going to choose this area on this pedestrian crossing coming across this street here, Broadway. And so we're going to click and then drag up, and we're going to hold down the Shift key as we drag. This will constrain the gradient to a perfect vertical here, and we're not going to go too far. We want a narrow area of focus, and so as I let go now, that area comes into focus. Okay, and we can see in the layer mask there is what we've created is that reflected gradient. If I just hold down the Option key and click on that layer mask, we can see the extent of that area of focus, and click on the thumbnail, image thumbnail once again, to return to that normal view. Now, depending on the length of the gradient you drag, we can actually change the depth of field here. For instance, if I wanted a slightly broader area of focus, then again I could perhaps drag a slightly longer line. I'm going to drag that just a little bit higher than last time. Okay, let's just backtrack there. I've actually worked inside the image, and it's obviously very important to select the mask when we're doing this. So let's just click that one more time, holding down the Shift key, a little bit higher, and there we just recovered a larger amount of focus in this image now. Now, one of the problems with dropping the focus using the Gaussian blur, it does tend to make the tones just a little bit muddy and flat, and we don't have those beautiful bright highlights anymore because they've been sort of blurred with some of the darker surrounding tones. So what we're going to do is we're going to restore some of that vibrance to this area and come in with an adjustment layer. We're going to come in with the brightness contrast adjustment. Now I only want to affect the areas that we've dropped out of focus, so we're going to come over here into the adjustments panel and click on the icon down in the bottom left hand corner, which is a way of clipping the adjustment layer to the layer underneath. Now this will ensure that we're only affecting the pixels with the layer that it's clipped to. Okay, so we're going to make those tones just a little bit brighter. Here we're going to raise perhaps up to 15 or so, and also we're going to push a little bit of extra contrast into those tones to restore the contrast after having applied the blur. Okay, let's just zoom out. I'll just command minus or control minus on a PC and take a look at that overall effect. Okay, now that's giving me the sort of effect that I want. I'll just zoom in so we can get a slightly more accurate view of this. Okay, now if we at any time want to change our mind about where the area of focus is going to fall, then we can actually move that area of focus just by using the move tool. It's however very important to actually break this link that sits between the image and its layer mask, and the only thing I need to do in order to remove that link is just to click on it. Okay, now selecting the layer mask once again, click on it to make sure it's the active component of that layer. Coming over and selecting the Move tool from the Tools panel, and now I can click and drag inside that area. If I just hold down the Shift key as I drag, I can actually move that area of focus up to the a block further down Broadway there, and actually dropping the foreground further out of focus now. Okay, so this shows us how we can create that tilt shift effect to great effect, and you might have some fun with this technique. One of the things I have learnt about this technique, it's actually best played out on an image where we've chosen a high vantage point, i.e. we're looking down on an area. And this gives us that toy town feel much more quickly than if we're on street level when shooting these images.